Good morning. It is good to see each and every one of you this morning. It is a beautiful Lord's Day. As we were driving in this morning, I mentioned to Lindsay just how pretty the day is, and that we know that there are some that will not be where they're supposed to be this morning, that because of the beauty of the day, they'll be out enjoying it instead of worshiping the Lord as they ought. So it is good to see you. If you're visiting with us, I want you to know that you are our honored guest and that you are welcome to worship here with us at Pleasant Grove each and every opportunity that you may have. Appreciate the continued prayers for my mom. She was doing very well this morning. Talked to her for a few minutes, and she was feeling good, and Papa's feeling better than he has in the last couple weeks. I think he sees the light at the end of the tunnel with his chemo finishing up this week, and he'll have to go back every couple weeks to once a month to get a shot for his calcium problems. But I think he's feeling a little bit better, and Mom said he's wanting to get out and go and do and drive a little bit, but that's a whole other issue within itself. So appreciate the continued prayers. Appreciate the prayer of Brother David this morning. Appreciate the song service and Bible class. Brother Philip did just a fine job with the Bible class this morning. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Been talking with my boys, been talking with a lot of kids at school over the past couple of weeks, especially about making good choices, and that choices have consequences. And the season that we're in is a sad season to me, but it's the prom season, and one that I don't encourage whatsoever. And lots of bad decisions are made at this time of year. We have in front of our school right now, it's been there all week, it's a big flatbed 18-wheeler that has 3 cars on it, and they're just tore to pieces from wrecks, and all 3 of them involved a drunk driver. And it's there for what is called the prom promise, that you won't drink and drive on prom night, that you'll make good choices. And we've talked with my boys, just about making good decisions, and decisions have consequences, just with your grades and whether to do homework or not do homework, whether to get it turned in on time, just simple things like that. Did a little research, and the average human makes about 35,000 decisions a day. And when I saw that number, I was like, wow, that's a lot. And so as I got up this morning, I started trying to think of every decision I was making. I lost count before I got my teeth brushed. Because if you think about it, we make so many decisions in our lives. Whether it's what to wear, whether it's what not to wear, what goes with what to eat. By the way, you can look at me till I like to make decisions about eating. The average human makes about 227 decisions a day about what to eat. It's actually 226.7. I rounded it up to 227 because I probably make a little bit more than the average human. But it seems like a lot. But as I was driving in, I tried to think about the decisions that I was making this morning, not just on what to wear and what to dress, and what washcloth and what towel to get out of the linen closet, and driving down the road, when to push on the accelerator, when to put on the brakes, and whether to use my turn signal or not, things of that nature. There's so many decisions that we make in our lives. Then I also thought that just even as driving in, one bad decision could cost me my life. Having my entire family with me driving in could cost their entire life. One bad decision could have a lifetime of consequences and could be life-ending. I spent just about all day Friday, talking with 5 young girls, ages 12 to 14, who had been caught with vapes and vaping at school. And about what a poor choice that is. And the consequences that they receive for that. If you get caught vaping in our school today, it's automatic 3 days out of school suspension. We contact our school resource officer. They issue you a ticket and you have to go before the judge. Cut and dry, no questions asked if you're caught. Because it is so bad. But think about the decisions that people make with drinking and drugs and sex, and how those are lifelong. A friend of mine passed away this past week at 36 years old because of some decisions he made early on in life dealing with drugs that had a physical effect on him and his heart. You see, decisions have consequences. Even what we might think is we just mentioned decisions about drinking and drugs and sex and things like that, but even what some may think of as smaller decisions on whether to miss worship services or not come on Wednesday evening, or to miss Bible class, not studying as we ought. Even decisions like that have consequences. How about us as Christians? What about our choices? How do the choices we make as Christians not only affect our lives here on earth, but how they affect our eternity? How do they affect our eternity? So what we're going to talk about this morning, if you haven't figured it out already, choices have consequences. And we're going to look at Lot this morning. And as time is quickly fleeting, we may be looking at Lot next Sunday morning as well. I told Lindsay as I'd been working on this sermon, it just kind of grew and grew and grew. And it's just been a great study for me, and I hope that it will be for you. If you see the passage there, Romans chapter 15 and verse 4, it says, "For whatever was written in former days was written for our instruction, that through endurance and through encouragement and through the encouragement of the Scriptures we might have hope." The story of Lot is a wonderful story for us to study in so many facets. But it's a really good story about choices and consequences and making poor decisions and the consequences of those decisions and what we can learn from that. So I encourage you to follow along as we go through our study this morning, that you will examine the Scriptures, examine what they say, and make application and think when we make choices that we are making good ones. We'll begin in Genesis chapter 13 with our study. We read the story of Lot in Genesis chapter 13, chapter 14, chapter 19, but Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah and Lot's wife are mentioned in 4 other books of the Bible and included in the New Testament. That tells me that we need to be paying attention. And we'll see in just a few moments, there's a verse that says, "Remember Lot's wife." That means we need to know that story. We need to understand that story. And there's a lot that we can learn from it. It's a story that many of us have known since we were young children, that we've heard probably many sermons on over the years. Yet it yields great lessons, examples, and reminders to us today, no matter our age. So beginning in Genesis chapter 13 and verse 8, it says, "Then Abram said to Lot, 'Let there be no strife between you and me, and between your herdsmen and my herdsmen. For we are kinsmen. Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself from me. If you take the left hand, I will go to the right. Or if you take the right hand, then I will go to the left.' And Lot lifted up his eyes and saw the Jordan Valley was watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, in the direction of Zoar. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself all the Jordan Valley, and Lot journeyed east. Thus they separated from each other. Abram settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled among the cities of the valley and moved his tent as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. And as you're thinking, probably as we're reading this, wow, there's some bad decisions going on there. Not just one, but there's more than one decision that's made there. And we'll look at some of those as we go through our study, and we'll look at some more passages as we go through our study. But just a few points on what we just read. Number one, Abram gave Lot a choice of where to live. He gave him the choice. You go one way and I'll go the other. We see that there in verses 8 and 9. What did Lot choose? He chose what he thought was the best. He had himself. Me, what's good for me? What's good for my herd? What's good for my herdsmen? But what else? He was so self-centered that he didn't think about what lied in the valley, in the cities, and as it said there, and we'll look in just a second, how evil and wicked that they were. We know the story. And I'll jump ahead just a little bit, that one poor choice led to many troubles, led to many difficulties, and lifelong consequences. And consequences that plagued for generations. You see, we continue today to study the story of Lot and learn from him today. Lot chose for himself the Jordan Valley. He settled, as the English Standard Version uses, among the cities and moved his tent as far as Sodom. So when you settle somewhere, you take up residence. You stay there. So he chose not only to go this direction, but to stay there. And in Genesis 13 and 13, as we just read, the men of Sodom were wicked and great sinners against the Lord. He chose to move his tent as far as Sodom and be among those who were great sinners among the Lord. That's another bad choice. Not just the choice to think of himself, but to go that far. There's so many applications that we can make from this today. I couldn't help but think of Christians who moved to an area to where there's no local congregation. What are you putting first when you make a decision like that? To take and move your family to where there's no other Christians around. I think Lot's a good example of that. We need to think. We need to make good decisions, putting the Lord first in everything that we do. We know that as we go into this story that they couldn't find even 10 faithful people in these cities. Why would you put yourself in that position? Why would you put your family in that position? Because you're not put first. Lot's choices brought him grief, and it cost him his family. In Genesis chapter 14, beginning in verse 11, it says, "So the enemy took all the possessions of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their provisions and went their way." Verse 12 says, "They also took Lot, the son of Abram's brother, who was dwelling in Sodom, and his possessions, and went on their way." Again, that choice to go to the Jordan Valley, to pitch his tent and settle towards Sodom, what did they do? They took Lot and his possessions, But it didn't stop just there, did it? We know the story. In Genesis chapter 19 and verse 8, it says, Lot says here, "Behold, I have 2 daughters who have not known any man. Let me bring them out to you and do to them as you please. Only do nothing to these men, for they have come under the shelter of my roof." And we know what's going on here. And Lot is offering his daughters to these wretched people. I don't understand the mindset there either. But that one choice of moving towards Sodom and Gomorrah, we see a multitude of other poor choices and the ramifications of those. The choice to turn his daughters over, I don't understand that. But then a little bit further down in Genesis chapter 19 and verse 14, "So Lot went out and said to his sons-in-law who were to marry his daughters, 'Up, get out of this place, for the Lord is about to destroy the city.' But he seemed to his son-in-laws to be jesting." What kind of attitude is that? Poor choices. The influence of the people that are around him. And we'll look more at that in just a few moments. The Bible's very clear on that. We don't know a lot about the sons-in-law here. Were they from that area? Were they from those wicked people? But yet they were influenced by the people around them, because he said, "Let's get up, let's go." He's just joking. Poor choices. In Genesis chapter 19 and verse 26, we know I did a sermon a few years back on remembering Lot's wife. Again, Lot's choices brought him grief and cost him his family, but Lot's wife behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Lost his wife due to the choice in which he made. It was her choice to look back. But yet, would she have looked back if he had not made that choice in the first place to go that way? Choices have consequences, severe consequences, lifelong consequences, and eternal consequences. In Genesis chapter 19, beginning in verse 31, reading through verse 38, here's some more consequences that we see, some more poor decisions. And the firstborn said to the younger, and this is the daughters here, "Our father is old, and there is not a man on earth to come into us after the manner of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve offspring from our father." So they made their father drink wine that night. And the firstborn went in and lay with her father. He did not know when she lay down or when she arose. The next day the firstborn said to the younger, "Behold, I lay last night with my father. Let us make him drink wine tonight also. Then you go in and lie with him, that we may preserve offspring from our father." So they made their father drink wine that night also, and the youngest arose and lay with him. And he did not know that she lay down or when she arose. Thus both the daughters of Lot became pregnant by their father. The firstborn bore the son and called his name Moab. He is the father of the Moabites to this day. The younger also bore a son and called his name Ben-Ammi. He is the father of the Amorites to this day. Poor choices. Poor choices on many parts here. But what else do we know? You know, I said it was generational. The Moabites and the Amorites, or the Ammonites, they were good friends of Israel, weren't they? No. We see the ramifications of Lot's poor decisions generations later. You see, many poor decisions don't just affect just us. It affects us, maybe a husband or wife, children, parents, grandparents, great-grandchildren, and on down the line. We must put God first in all the decisions in which we make. We have been given this story of Lot to study, to learn from. It's mentioned in the New Testament that we'll look at here in a few moments. And next week now. It's given to us to learn from, to study. But I think sometimes we just gloss over it. That we don't see that choices have consequences. You know, we could talk about the choices here that Lot's daughters made. You know, that choice probably to move down to Sodom and Gomorrah had an influence on their morality. And we'll see that. The scriptures are clear on that, about where Lot lived, how it affected him as a righteous man. We'll see that here in a few moments. Second Peter chapter 2, beginning in verse 6. If by turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah to ashes, he condemned them to extinction, making them an example of what is going to happen to the ungodly. And if he rescued righteous Lot, greatly distressed by the sensual conduct of the wicked. For as that righteous man lived among them day after day, he was tormenting his righteous soul over their lawless deeds that he saw and heard. If that is not some plain scripture about choices and where you live and what you do, you need to wake up if you don't see it. The choices that Lot made. And it says here, he was living among these. He saw and he heard daily. And what did it do? It tormented his righteous soul. Why? Because he made that bad choice to move towards Sodom and Gomorrah. Had that snowball effect. It just grew and grew and grew and grew. You see, even this story of Lot is mentioned in the New Testament. It's mentioned as a wake-up call to us. Pay attention. Lot made some bad choices. Learn from it. But do we? Are we? We need to understand that God grants us the freedom to choose. In Genesis chapter 2, verses 15 through 17, it said, the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and keep it. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, you may surely eat of every tree of the garden, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. For in the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die. We as human beings have been given the freedom to choose. Even Adam and Eve back in the garden were told, don't eat of this tree. But they had the free will to choose whether or not to eat of that tree. We know that story too. They made the wrong choice. And guess what? We to this day are suffering for their poor choice. Why? Because the Bible tells us so. Choices have consequences. From the beginning to today. Deuteronomy chapter 30 and verse 15. See, I have set before you today life and good, death and evil. We've got a choice to do good or to do evil. What choices are you making? How are you living your life each and every day? One bad choice. One bad choice can have an eternal effect. We've got to put God first in everything that we do. Deuteronomy chapter 30, skipping down to verse 19, if you're there. I call heaven and earth to witness against you today, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore, choose life, that you and your offspring may live. We have the opportunity to choose life. It's up to us. What are we choosing? What are the consequences going to be from our choices that we make? You know, it can be something very simple in our lives. Whether or not to take that first drink of alcohol. There are people, and it's been studied time after time, that are predisposed to become alcoholics from that first drink. Do you know? Not till you drink. But what if you make that choice? What if you make that choice? What about making that choice to have a fornication, a relationship in fornication, and a child is born? What about that? What about that simple, I'm just tired. I don't want to go to worship services. I'm just going to stay home. That first time. Well, guess what? That second time is a little bit easier. And then that third time is a little bit easier. And it grows. You see, every little decision that we make has an effect, has a consequence. We must think before we act. We must put God first in everything that we do, in every choice decision that we make. We'll end with this passage this morning. Thought we might get in a little bit of discussion this morning as we were going over our daily Bible reading. I didn't say anything. Didn't want to get too far into it. But Joshua chapter 24, verses 15 through 22. And if it is evil in your eyes to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve. Whether the gods your father served in the region beyond the river, or the God of the Amorites, in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Then the people answered, Far be it from us, that we should forsake the Lord to serve other gods. For it is the Lord our God who brought us and our fathers up from the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery, and who did the great signs in our sight, and preserved us in all the way that we went, and among all the peoples through whom we passed. And the Lord drove out before us all the peoples, the Amorites who lived in the land. Therefore we also will serve the Lord, for he is our God. But Joshua said to the people, You are not able to serve the Lord, for he is a holy God. He is a jealous God. He will not forgive your transgressions or your sins. if you forsake the Lord and serve foreign gods. Then he will turn and do you harm and consume you after having done you good. And the people said to Joshua, no, but we will serve the Lord. Then Joshua said to the people, you are witnesses against yourselves that you have chosen to serve the Lord, to serve him. And they said, we are witnesses. Who are you serving today? In the decisions, in the choices that you make, who are you serving? Do we have the attitude of Joshua? As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Do we have that attitude? In everything that we do. In every choice that we make. Or we just do it sometimes. The choice is yours. The choice is yours to make. It's very clear that the Lord allows us to make our own choices. This day, who are you choosing to serve? Are we like Lot? We make a poor choice and we just keep going down that path of poor choices. We'll stop there this morning. Didn't even get halfway through. But I think you see very clear this morning that every choice we make is important. That we need to put God first in it all. So I ask you this morning, who are you choosing to serve? In the decisions and the choices that you make, who are you serving? Are we putting God first in each and everything that we say, in each and everything that we do? The choice is ours. Are we prepared for the consequences? It's up to you. If there's anything that we can do to help you this morning, if you need to become a Christian, if you need to get your life right, if you made some wrong choices, we'll pray for you, we'll help you, we'll encourage you, we'll do what we can to help. But you've got to make the choice to be on the Lord's side. If we can help you in any way this morning, please come as we stand and